You're listening to the New York Said podcast.
Fear not, my friends. This will be my greatest performance.
Give it to me.
Here we go. We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
All is well. How are you?
I'm good.
You ready to nerd out on some New York stuff?
Yeah, I think so. Let me just put my phone on Do Not Disturb so no one disturbs.
So, Bianca, you grew up in Miami?
Yeah, Miami native originally.
I love
But
Miami.
I've been in New York now for like 9 years, so.
Yeah, I used to live in Florida for like 4 or 5 years. I lived in Orlando, Sarasota. So, like, whenever I really wanted to party, it was Miami. That's where I headed.
Oh my God, so not very far. Nice.
Florida was one of those places where I got a lot of experience because it felt like they were saying, like, if you look like you could do it, you can do it. Out here in New York, you know, I grew up in Queens. Everything felt like, who do you know? You got to kiss the ring. You got to pay this kind of due. You got to do this. And I'm just like, Florida was like, if you said you could do it, then do it. And I did it.
Totally. No, for better or worse, Florida definitely is like, all right, we'll give you a shot.
Mm-hmm.
We're here. To your point, it's kind of a who you know, which I knew no one when I moved here. So I'm very fortunate to have kind of landed where I've landed now.
So what was that moment where you were like doing your thing out in Florida and then you was like, I got to get out of here. I gotta make a change.
Honestly, I have always known I needed to be somewhere with seasons.
Mm-hmm.
I was the weird kid in hoodies and coats when it's 100 and something degrees outside. I had an armoire full of sweaters, and my parents just were very confused by this because you don't need that in Miami.
Mm-mm.
So originally I actually wanted to move to London, having never been there, just in my head.
What about London? Like, what was pulling you out there?
You know what? I just think, to your point of needing a change, you know? And I think growing up, especially in your teens, you're always kind of angsty to get out.
Yeah.
That was driving me. And my parents kind of gave me a reality check of, well, why don't we try something in the States and then, you know, go from there? I was like, all right, I think New York would be a place that I could thrive in. And that was kind of it. I just set my mind on that. And it wasn't really, I didn't really have any other option in my head. It was, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to graduate, I'm going to move to New York. And that was set in stone mentally. And then I just did that.
New York is not an easy place to live. So, like, what was that reality check for you?
So I had a couple of reality checks early on. First being not being able to find a job immediately and having to pay rent. That was a bit tough, and having to just do a lot of internships that weren't paid for.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anyone, so it was very much chatting with my neighbors at the time who worked at, I think it was American Express, and seeing if they could get me an interview with someone just to get a job or land something. So that was a reality check, especially months 4, 5, when I was getting calls from my family like, all right, you know,
Right.
we got to start wrapping this thing up. And if you need to come back to Florida, let us know. So
Were they like treating it like a social experiment? Like, okay, you got that out your system. Come on home.
Totally. I was like, no, I have to make this work. I have to find something. That was one. And then I would say subways in general, not knowing the times, not knowing. Uber was starting, but I lived on the Upper West Side, and everyone I did know or meet lived downtown. So Ubers were like $80. This was pre-ride share time where you could split with other people. I don't even know if they still do that, but you know, at one point they would pick people up along the way to like.
Yeah, I remember those days. I don't think they do that anymore.
No, I don't think so either since COVID, which I guess makes sense. But so I was like, all right, well, I'm jobless. I can't spend $80 every time I want to engage with people. So was taking the subway until like 3, 4 a.m., which I wouldn't recommend or do now. But yeah, I had a lot of reality checks. I was walking a lot, which turned out like I loved that part. I would walk to work and walk back, even if it was a 2-hour walk.
I'm big on walking too. That's literally how New York said came to be. I had moved back from Florida and I realized how much had changed. And I was like, let me just start taking pictures of this stuff. And then it just evolved from there.
Totally. So when did you move back?
I moved back in like '09. Believe it or not, I was working for an agency out there called Miles. And their biggest client at the time, or one of their biggest clients, was visitflorida.com.
Okay.
And so I was a shooter, photographer, travel photographer. So I was like covering the entire state of Florida from Key West to Alabama. We did like 200 videos of every type of Miami, anything in Miami, anything in Key West. Like, so it could be like an orange grove. It could be, and I mean, in the whole entire state. So like all the fancy golf courses, Burns, anything you could think of, we covered it. It was like a dream job. I love that though. It was fantastic.
I will say that's one thing about Florida that I will say I miss is having a car and just being able to go anywhere or do anything. If you just woke up one morning and decided, today I want to go and look at manatees on the west of Florida.
Yeah, we did that.
You can do that. We're here. There's a lot more planning involved. At least for me, I don't have a car. I know some people do, depending where in New York you live. But
I haven't had a car in years. When I moved to Manhattan, I gave my car away. I have a second mother mentor upstate, and she's like, my car went down. I said, you can have mine. And I just drove it up, and I was like, she's like, what do I owe you? I was like, nothing. I probably pay more in tickets and tax and parking than this is easy to give it to you. And it was cool.
Totally. Yeah, so that's like one thing in New York that I do miss, though I don't think I could give up the walkability.
That's the beauty of it. Like sometimes like when I have friends in town and I'm like, hey, we want to do something? And I'm like, yeah. And I'll literally say, meet me at Broadway and Lafayette and Houston. And I'll just walk them over. And depending on like if they have, if they're like down for the walk for real, then we'll walk all the way to the Williamsburg Bridge and walk through Domino Park, the whole nine, just giving them this full-fledged experience. And they may be coming in from Oregon or something like that. And I'm like, I'm going to show you, I'm not a tour guide, but I'm a person who loves this city. So like, I'll show you some stuff like that.
You know what? We do that a bit as well. A lot of our team is based in Madrid and Spain, Europe in general, since Secret Media Network started.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that. Like, talk to us about Secret Media and what it is, because it's like, I don't want people to assume like they just know what we're talking about. I really want them to be clear on what it is.
Absolutely. So Secret Media Network is a hyperlocal guide for all things to do. In New York's case, for Secret NYC, all things to do in New York, the 5 boroughs and surrounding areas, but we're in 200 plus cities internationally. So depending on what city you're in, we have a presence there as well, especially in some of the larger metropolitan cities, of course. We're everywhere in that sense. To what I was going to say before, when people do come to visit us from other cities, that has been such a big thing to see New York, and as much of New York in maybe the 2 or 3 days that they're here is just walking, because even without physically going up to the top of Rockefeller Center or wherever, Empire State Building, you can point out all of the different landmarks across the city if you're just willing to commit a few hours to walking around. So we would just go around. It's like, okay, Empire State Building, check. Ellis Island, check. The Brooklyn Bridge, check. And you can kind of do a whole bunch of things just by walking.
What's your favorite walk?
Go ahead.
I said, what's your favorite walk?
That's a good question. I've walked a lot of interesting routes. I would say I really like the walk along kind of Greenpoint to Williamsburg waterfront. Just because you see the city. I think sometimes, like anything, when you're inside the city, you don't see the skyline. So I think it's nice being able to be on the outside looking in. So I do really like that walk. And there's a lot of cool little shops and restaurants and cafes along the way that you could pop into, and fun bars. So I would say that walk might be one of my top walks.
One of my
What
top
about you?
one of my top walks would be the High Line. I would start literally. You could either start at Hudson Yards or start at the Whitney, but I always start at the Whitney usually and end at Hudson Yards. And the reason why I love it is, to your point, like you can see the city from a hyper architectural, like gallery sense, because as you're walking through, you're seeing like Zaha Hadid architects and just several. I'm not gonna sit here and name off a bunch of architects, but the buildings are just so beautiful. And then you can just take breaks, like go down, depending if you're in the 20s, go and check out some art, then go back up and then grab a meal at Hudson Yards. And, and sometimes if there's, especially in the summertime, at the end of it, there'll be vinyl nights. And then you can like listen to house music and, have a drink and no one's tripping about anything. It's just good vibes, mostly in the summer.
At the end of it on Hudson Yards side, you're saying?
Yeah.
I don't know if I've been to Vinyl Nights.
Oh my God, you should go to Vinyl Nights. It's just straight up old school hip hop, R&B, and house music, but I like a lot of disco, like Club 54, but the stuff that has like a lot of soul to it. And so usually they have like fantastic DJs, and it's free. It's usually like right in front of the Vessel, but like not, where in front of the Vessel they show movies and stuff like that. But like a park that's like across the street in the distance, but you can't miss it. The music is going to be pumping, but it's always good vibes.
I think I was just looking it up now, and I think it's through September. I'll have to check that out. There's so much happening in the city that even covering Secret NYC, there's always something that I find out that I had no idea about. It's great.
So what is the responsibilities of an executive editor at Secret Media Network? Like what do you do?
Oh, sure. So my role has really changed over the years, just based on what we need, adapting to how people engage with content and topics and just the general cultural, social landscape. Mm-hmm. So I would say I help curate a lot of the content across a whole bunch of cities. So I manage the North American region, so it's US and Canada. So really helping to have a bird's eye view of what everyone's doing and covering, and seeing where we might have overlaps or similarities that we can implement across the board. So a lot of that cross-pollination of content and ideas, and just trying out new things and getting inspiration from different parts of the country, but also the region, and even on an international landscape, looking over at what our peers in Spain or Europe or the UK are doing. So that's kind of my role now, is having more of that bird's eye lens and being able to speak to that and help the teams locally get some of that information. And then working on a lot of projects as well. So I think we may have mentioned, or maybe not here, but some stickers, like our sticker project to highlight local businesses. So helping the teams work locally in the communities to connect with local businesses and make sure we're spotlighting them and giving them a platform as well.
Yeah.
So that's been really fun to do over the years. I mean, when I first started, I was just writing. It was just me, myself, and I behind a computer putting out content, kind of guessing a little bit.
Let's talk about that for a second. Like,
you
started out as a travel and a food writer. So did you start out like in a sense of, because some people don't realize like how, I was talking to my friend yesterday, like I've been doing New York Set for 10 years. And I was telling him that like, because I've been doing it for 10 years, that means my first day of New York Set is today. So it took 10 years for people to start reaching out to me and for things to begin to roll, because it's like in the beginning, I was like similar to like what you were saying. I was at my computer just doing things, trying to convince people that, no, it's good, it's this, it's that. But over time, because I've been so consistent, I begin to attract things. So like talk about those early days where you're like paying your dues to yourself and your dream.
Absolutely. So, I mean, my early days, I started in radio and broadcast in Florida. So this kind of feels like a full circle moment because I stepped away from that. And then here I am on podcasts again over a decade later. But then I did travel and food writing ultimately in my earlier days in New York, covering food, but on a global scale. So it kind of had nothing to do with New York, even though it had a lot to do with New York since there are so many different people here.
Yeah.
And then fast forward a little bit to Secret. And to your point, no one really knew who we were. So it was a lot of chasing after PR people, being kind of secondhand breaking news, and getting onto people's radars was a challenge. It's so nice and interesting now to still be here and be able to really see how that has flipped, where people do come to us, people do know who we are, people do recognize some of the team, depending, like our video producers, for instance, get recognized sometimes, which is really cool. So it has been such a journey, and it's nice now. And I'm glad I'm still here and part of the journey from day one to where we are now. But to your point, the early days was a lot of chasing and showing and creating that space for
I feel like the Secret NYC account is literally like part of the starter kit. Like if you was to sign up to Instagram, like this is one of the accounts that just immediately has to be followed.
Oh, I love that. I'm so glad to hear that because that's been such a goal for a long time that now hearing that, it's like, okay, next goal, like goalpost keeps shifting. And it's so exciting to be able to just keep doing more with the city, honestly. But there's so much to do.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's such a challenge to keep up with. And sometimes people will tell me they're living in, like I got friends in Florida that are like, did you know that this art exhibit is happening? I'm like, no, I did not know that, but I'm going to go today, to be honest with you. So like it happens. I guess it takes a village to even, to your point earlier, where like, if you're in the city, it's kind of hard to see because there's so much going on that it may take somebody from outside of the city to show you that this thing that you can't see because you're literally in the forest.
Yeah, completely. And that's something that is always a challenge because our team right now, we're about 10, which is crazy.
Wow.
For me to think. I feel like that's kind of big, but it is still relatively small. So 10 people, there's only so much of the city we can see. So we do rely on other people to share their slice of life of New York with us. But there's so much to do and we can't get to every single corner, but hopefully in time we can make our way to.
So what was the boom? Like at what point did like no one knew your name to all of a sudden it was like an inciting moment where like now we're on the map? Like what was that thing that put Secret NYC on the map?
You know, I don't think it's been one thing. I do think it's been kind of building blocks over the years. That being said, during the pandemic, like early on, probably the first 6-8 months of it, where we had to pivot a bit from things to do to more newsy, up-to-date, digestible local news, which was something that we never really did up until that point, and now is such a large part of what we do, particularly for Secret NYC, at least.
Okay.
That, I would say, put us on the map in a different way. People didn't just see us as fluffy, I guess. Like, it wasn't just in passing, maybe we'll go and do these. They really were starting to come to us for realistic things to do from home, or here's, top line 3 things to know for this week. So not necessarily super heavy, hard hitting news in that sense, but news that was relevant to people, even news of how people are, connecting still, how people are finding ways to connect in
100%. And all
from
that stuff
home.
it was so necessary around that time because like being here there were times where I was horrified. Like the news was just so negative and things was just because it really was like that. And then something that you guys may post may be positive to take my mind off of like the death toll is blah, blah, and I'm like, oh my God. So like that balance of like, I don't need hard hitting facts and news from every source. So like that nice balance of like, did you know that you could walk Central Park and you don't, like it's a lot of space out there. So, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And so that's what we were really trying to do, was not add fuel to the fire that was already happening. If you want
that was
those
great
numbers, you can find that somewhere else. But let's focus on people clapping. Let's ask, New Yorkers to send us their moments or the different art that they're seeing out on their walks, or where they can get the to-go drinks, or whatever the case is, and really tapping in. I would say around that time we were, and I think a lot of people were tapping into more of that user-generated content as well, seeing how other New Yorkers live, other people live, seeing things through other lenses. So really leaning into that and the community element, I think set us apart at the time. And that's a thread that we've continued to now with a lot of our projects and day-to-day coverage of things.
It would be a sin to have you on the phone and not be able to get some recommendations of things to do and places. It's the end of the summer, so like this may come out because it's I release these sporadically, so this may come out in the fall. So let's talk about fall things or just things in general. But what are some things that you think people should be getting ready for? Things people should be trying, whether it's a staycation or you're coming to visit. And I'll share some too.
Ooh, that is, fall is on the mind, huh? So I guess depending when this comes out, there's something that I've been saying from the beginning of summer that I have still yet to do is the kayaking under Brooklyn Bridge. I know this isn't necessarily a fall activity, but could still apply toward end of summer, early fall. But kayaking along the river, I think that they leave from under the Brooklyn Bridge Park area.
Yep.
So I've yet to do that, and I see our team went actually, I think a few weeks ago, and I didn't get a chance to go. But that's something I would really like to do, and I feel like everyone should do at some point. And then going into the fall, I mean, September's Oktoberfest, so there'll be a lot of that happening. I feel like people are already thinking about Halloween and spooky season, cozy spots. I'm trying to think what would be something.
I kind of hit you with a loaded question. Let me pivot a little bit. Just in general. Like what are some of the things? Like I think those are great for the fall, but like specifically, what are some things people should be doing today? Like regardless of what the weather is or what the season is in New York, what do you think is cool?
So where I think is cool, I've been spending a lot of time in kind of Greenpoint, Williamsburg area. So I have recommendations for that area.
Let's go. Like it counts.
It kind of depends where you are. So I don't know. But I've been really into the top of the Arlo Hotel here. They have it was a big thing a few years ago, and I feel like I don't see it so much anymore, but the Water Tower bar.
Okay.
I don't know if you
remember that. This is new to me.
Yeah, you're in one of those like water towers that they've repurposed now and turned into a bar, which is really cool. And you have a nice view of the skyline. And on Saturday nights, and I think also during the day on Sunday, they have DJs playing there, so it turns into a fun party. So that's a fun thing to do with a really nice backdrop of the city. What else?
I would say I would just throw in a few. For me, I would think people should go to like catch some of those vinyl spots. Like my favorite one is Record Room out in Long Island City. That's a low key, really cool spot. Food wise, I like Dixon Farm Stand down in Chelsea
Why does that
Market.
sound familiar? Oh, in Chelsea Market.
Yeah, it's that butcher shop way downstairs in the corner.
Yes.
Their food is very consistent, and they have like charcuterie, like anything from like the fanciest of charcuterie to the best beef jerky, which I'm kind of a beef jerky connoisseur at this point. But they
have a good seafood market too there in Chelsea Market. I love their seafood if you're looking for like sushi grade fish.
Yep.
That's a sleeper because you think Chelsea Market is more touristy, but actually there's some gems in there.
There's definitely a lot of gems in there. And the fact that it was like, and I could be wrong, but I'm almost certain that it was an old Nabisco factory. So like the architecture in there is fantastic. There's always a rotation of different art on the walls that I've always appreciated, and just the ironwork on the inside from the elevators to the floor to when it's holiday time and all the lights from the ceiling. So like you said, it is a bit touristy, but as a New Yorker, like this is what you pay the high taxes for. Like go experience these things. Like what are you doing?
No, truly. I agree. In terms of also food, actually, a bagel spot, and maybe, everyone has their own favorite spots, but Frankel's in Greenpoint, obsessed with their whitefish bagel sandwich.
Yeah.
So big fan of them. And I actually tried going to Rec Room a few weeks ago, and I guess I got there a little too late and they wouldn't let me in. So I still haven't been, but it's on my list.
It's definitely worth it. When we're talking about bagels, my favorite is on Houston, closer to like Avenue C. It's called Heavenly Bagel. I used to live in that area, Alphabet City, and
same. I lived on Avenue C.
Yeah, I used to live on Avenue D, and I would always go to Heavenly, and like I loved it because it was like just a neighborhood spot, and they're not like known like Black Seed or what have you. They don't have like a following like that, but all the locals are going there. The police officers are going there. The EMS workers are going there, and they're just consistent and they're efficient. Like they'll get whatever you need really quick. It took like 2 years for the guy who takes my order to realize like, hey, I've been coming here for 2 years. But just crack a smile, bro. Like I'm here like all the time. Like, but eventually, like they knew that what my coffee order was. It took a while, but but the food and the coffee and everything was just very consistent, so that's on the list for me as well.
Totally. Gosh, I'm looking at my map, which is crazy. It's
I can't even fathom what your map looks like, knowing that you're covering the entire city.
The amount, 90% of it is like want to go because I have something on every single block in all 5 boroughs. But yeah, there's so much. I guess if I'm sticking to the Greenpoint theme that I gave myself here, there's an area by the water that's really great that has, if you just wanted to do a little bit of a food bar crawl, there's like the Taqueria Ramirez, and then around the corner is this cute bar, Little Rascals, and Penguin that has an outdoor patio. So, gosh, there's just so much to do. You have to help me refine this. What are you looking for?
Right. And my last suggestion is only because I'm Southside Jamaica, Queens. You got to go to Margarita Pizza of Jamaica Ave. Just take the E train to the last stop in Queens. Walk up Jamaica Ave, get a slice, and then hop back on the train. like that. That's the pizza I grew up on, and it's still consistent and still a fave.
Yeah, I definitely have to spend more time in Queens. I've been dying to do a food crawl through Elmhurst area. I feel like there's so many good spots there that I have yet to explore. So that's kind of next on my list of things I have to do.
The world is definitely in Queens. The the last question that I have for you is, throughout all this time, through, from Miami to today, to paying your dues as a travel and food writer, to now where you find yourself, where you're finding your footing as your industry is evolving, what have you learned? What has been like the most important lesson you've learned personally, and then the most important lesson you've learned professionally? And it might be the same, so like, but what have you learned?
What have I learned? Gosh, I've learned so much, but I will try to put it into a shorter sound bite here. I've learned just try. Mm-hmm. That sounds so...
Show up. Yeah.
Yeah, just give it a shot. If there's something you are thinking or aren't sure of, instead of assuming it won't work, just try it.
Yep.
Worst case, it doesn't, and then you try the next thing. But best case, it's actually a really great idea and you're onto something. So, yeah, I think professionally, I've also been really lucky to have bosses that have encouraged that and creativity and just kind of believing in yourself in that regard of, cool, you have this idea. Now, how do we make it happen? Let's give it a shot. We've done that with, I wanted to create merch with Secret NYC. So we collaborated with a company for others who we created a hat with. And then some of that, the proceeds from that went to a local charity. So just trying things out. It wasn't something we did long term, but hey, we did it. We gave it a shot and it was a really cool project to work on. So I think professionally would be that, even though it could translate into personal as well. If you have an idea or something that you just think you need to do it. And I think on that same thread, personally learning to trust your instincts.
Yeah.
And that's like super broad stroke, but I think it applies to really anything
it does
anyone's doing.
Even if you're traveling 3 o'clock in the morning on the train, like trust your instinct. Like things don't feel right.
Honestly, probably most so. Yeah, most so. In New York, always trust your instincts. If something feels off, lead into that. If you feel you need to cross the street, lead into that. Yep. If you feel okay to take, a train at 3 a.m, go ahead. Like just trust yourself.
And your intuition and your instinct. And the thing I wanted to add on to the just try part, sometimes things not working out is part of the process of it working out. So if you have an idea and you keep failing at it and it's not doing what you wanted to do, that's part of it. It's kind of like if you wanted to shoot 10 free throws in a row and make it. The first time you do that, you might only make 1 out of 10, 3 out of 10. But over time, you're finding out what works, what doesn't work, and you're finding the rhythm. It's not supposed to always work out, and you're supposed to fail in the beginning. But if you stick to it, if you really believe in that idea, it may take 10, 7, 5 years for you to really be like, oh, I know, I got the solution. The big stuff worth doing usually takes a lot of failing to get to the answer.
Absolutely. And at some point, something will lock in together. I've been writing for a long time, and there are definitely jobs I've quit and I got in my head about it. I'm not a quitter. You get this narrative of is this something I should be doing? But then here I am 7 years in with Secret, and it was just other places just weren't the fit for me.
Yep.
And you just keep doing it. And you find your footing. But I think those are the two, and they apply both professionally and personally.
Beautiful. Well, Bianca, thank you. I wish you continued success. I'm thankful that you gave us a moment of your time to build and nerd out about New York. This has been excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. And if you need any recommendations, definitely feel free to ask me, but also check out Secret NYC.
Let's go. Yeah. So have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Have a good one.
All right. Peace.